Hello viewers. Well, there's no rest for the wicked, because no sooner have I finished taking part in the latest JW podcast episode with Erwin Zolkin and discussing the Jose Lopez case. If you haven't heard the interview yet, please do. It's on jwpodcast.org. No sooner is that in the can and we're able to talk about it than there's a new video uploaded to JW Broadcasting, which is tv.jw.org, and I obviously did a video on this for the first episode, which was the October episode featuring Stephen Lett, and that has since had over 30,000 views, so it kind of puts me under a little bit of pressure to talk about the next one, or at least that's how I've interpreted it. So I thought I'd do a video. I was, first of all, because I watched the broadcast, the episode, call it what you will, and there was just so much material in there that was ripe for parody, and at one point I was seriously considering spending a bit of time on this and doing one of my old style videos where I show a clip and then talk about it, show a clip and then talk about it, which takes ages to put together, but it just seemed so perfect for that kind of video. But it's such a huge file to download. I've tried 2 or 3 times and it's just not working for me, and there's also the copyright issue as well. I'm trying to be a good boy for YouTube at the moment and keep my channel free from copyright strikes, so I'm afraid you've just got me talking about my thoughts on the video, but hopefully we can still have a laugh. And at the end of the video I am going to play a little bit of the broadcast video, just by way of having a bit of a laugh, so I hope you'll enjoy that. Okay, so the first snippet that we're introduced to, the first segment of the video, is this piece on the cult compound in Florida, the training compound in Florida that they've renovated. And there was a few things about this. It kind of showed me the direction that jw.org is going in, and it's all about appealing to the emotion. So you have a sister crying when she's relating how difficult it was and how touched she was by her invitation to the school. You have one of the instructors crying when he's talking about how amazing the renovation project was. And you're thinking, what are you crying about? It's not really that big a deal, but obviously it works very well as part of a cult indoctrination video when you've got people crying, because there's a lot of sincerity there and people feel sorry for them, feel emotionally drawn to them. You also had these really bizarre references to cancer. Now, cancer affects me personally because it was a cancer that killed my mother. So I don't appreciate references to cancer that are inappropriate or done in such a way as to exploit the disease for emotional brownie points, and that's precisely what's done in this video. You have an older guy who decides to enlist as a volunteer even though he's been given a short time to live by his doctors, and because he has cancer. And you also have the sister I referred to earlier talking about how her brother had stage 3 cancer, and she was in a dilemma as to whether to attend the school or help to look after him, which is obviously a no-brainer. I mean, the school's going to be around for well, however long it takes for Watchtowers to change it to another school, which is another issue entirely. Your brother you're not going to get a replacement for him. So if there's a choice between spending time with someone you love, someone you care about, and going to one of these indoctrination sessions, it's a complete no-brainer. But again, cancer is invoked, and I just didn't appreciate the reference. My mother died of cancer. It's a vicious, vicious killer. and I don't appreciate it being used in that way. The other thing about the Florida segment was this obsession with blaming everything on Jehovah's Spirit. And just to show how ludicrous this is, there's a few instances where it talks about the time scale. So it says we had a very tight time scale. Sorry, we had a very tight time frame, they say at one point. And they also say there was perhaps a time frame of a month and a half for this project. And then later on they say, sometimes our challenge was not enough time. We'd have to crunch a schedule. Well, who was involved in the time frame, in putting the time frame together? No one imposed that on the organisation. It was the organisation who set themselves a deadline. They got to make that decision. It wasn't inflicted on them by authorities or anyone. And having allocated that time frame, you then do what it says in Luke. You sit down and decide whether you've got enough materials, resources to fulfill that project, which I'm assuming they did. And they throw money at it, and they throw free volunteer labour at it, and hey presto, the project is realised. You can't then turn around and say, look, we've managed to renovate a few buildings. It could only have been done with Jehovah's Spirit, but that is precisely what they say. Jehovah's Spirit guided us to make good decisions. We can see directly that Jehovah has said, this is where I want you to go, is what it says in the video. The only way it could be done was through the Spirit of God. That was when the brother was tearing up, the older brother. And then at the end of the segment, Geoffrey Jackson says, with Jehovah's Spirit and willing workers, much can be accomplished, to Jehovah's praise. Again, how can you point at something as ordinary as a building being done up and say this could only have been done with Jehovah's Spirit? And here's why it's so distasteful to make such claims, because I've already done a video on the Philippines disaster. In one congregation, 22 Jehovah's Witnesses were physically swept from their kingdom hall and dragged to their deaths. Where was Jehovah's Spirit there? Where was Jehovah's Spirit in 2012 when 2 Jehovah's Witnesses died on their way to a convention in a bus crash in Miami? And only last week, it's been reported, there was a bus crash in Honduras where 14 witnesses were killed. So you see my point. You can't invoke Jehovah's hand, Jehovah's Spirit, call it what you will, during the good times and say, well, this could only have happened due to Jehovah's Spirit, and completely ignore the tragedies. Where was Jehovah's Spirit then? Is Jehovah more interested in building a cult compound, in putting together a soundstage for a broadcasting show, in making sure more Bibles get printed over the summer, than he is in physically preserving the lives of his worshippers when they're going about activities involved in his worship? Would you feel drawn to a deity who had such an obvious imbalance in his priorities? So, yeah, a really troubling but interesting segment on the, well, I can only call it a cult compound. That's what it is. It's training people. It's not educating people in the way that most people would consider education. It's training them to be better publicists of the organisation. So then Geoffrey starts talking a little bit about translation. He says that this is an issue that's quite close to his heart, and I didn't want to let him get away with this, because the impression is given that Jehovah's Witnesses, wherever they are in the world, all have access to the same materials. In other words, no matter what language you speak, Jehovah's organisation has the publications available for you, or at least that's the impression that's given when he starts saying, oh well, our literature is now being translated in 700 plus languages. Well, that alone isn't something to brag about. I could make one of my articles available, or let's make it even simpler. I could publish a statement in over 700 languages if I really wanted to. But that would be just one statement. It would be something different if I was able to say, well, every single JW survey article and every single one of my videos is either translated or subtitled for every one of those languages. That's not what Watchtower can say. And I made the point in the God's Kingdom Rules video, that's a two-part video that I did, where David Splain admits that the Proclaimers book, they couldn't translate it into a lot of languages. And I happen to live in one of the countries, Croatia, where the Proclaimers book isn't available. It's not like we're an island in the Pacific or something. It's a fairly big country. I'm sure there are countries bigger than Croatia that don't have the Proclaimers book. And what it means is that local witnesses just don't have a clue about the organisation's history. And obviously the Proclaimers book offers a very slanted, biased interpretation of the organisation's history, but at least it's something, at least it's a framework that you can build on. At least you can show people that there might have been something going on with pyramids, that there was a place called Bethsarim. You can show it you can show people in their own publications, but you can't do that in Croatian. You can't do that in a lot of other languages as well. And I just didn't want to let Mr. Jackson get away with that point. There's also this video which was quite interesting, where it was a dramatisation of 5 individuals, all of whom write to Watchtower. And there was Grace, who was a woman who was grieving the loss of her husband, who gets a leaflet through the door. There was Alex, a businessman who takes a book from one of the literature carts. There was Paul, a prisoner who picks up a magazine in the prison library. There was Amisha, a girl who takes a leaflet in a waiting room. And then there was Brooke, a little girl who was being indoctrinated by her father using the jw.org videos for children. So all of these people decide to write in some way to the organisation, and I would strongly recommend, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, perhaps you're being preached to by Jehovah's Witnesses, perhaps you're having the literature brought to you, or you've expressed interest in some way, perhaps you're in the early stages of having a Bible study, just watch this video, because I would personally, if I was in your shoes, I would find it very creepy how my personal details are passed around and filed and recorded and, you know, passed on a slip of paper in a Kingdom Hall. I would just find that a little bit creepy. I mean, I know that they've volunteered this information either online or by filling in a form in the back of the magazines, but you don't necessarily like to think of that information then being passed from person to person to person to person, with multiple people seeing where you live and seeing that you're interested in this particular subject. So I found that a little bit creepy. But the really interesting thing that I wanted to bring out about this video was towards the end, where it talks about, that's right, it says, numerous pieces of correspondence are received for the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, no surprises there. Included in these are many heartfelt expressions of gratitude. Now, this is interesting. It's telling people what they want to receive at world headquarters, and what they want to receive are heartfelt expressions of gratitude. These letters are organised, scanned and sent to the corresponding committees of the governing body. We can assure you that these expressions of appreciation bring our dear brothers great joy. And there's a really interesting part where it shows this little girl who's being indoctrinated. It shows her thank you message, her thank you picture that she's coloured in, being opened by Gerrit Loesch, who just so happens to have recently been his name mentioned in connection with a sex abuse lawsuit, because he had the opportunity, or he was summoned by court order to appear and defend the organisation's policies on child sex abuse, and he jumped through hoops not to attend, to the point where the organisation was punished. They weren't allowed to present evidence, and Erwin Zalkin had a free run at presenting and proving to the court that his client was abused, and the Watchtower did nothing to prevent it. And there you have the man who's mentioned in all of that, Gerrit Loesch, just a day or so later after the judgment is announced in the media. There he is on tv.jw.org, opening a letter of appreciation. You couldn't make it up. I mean, the timing is just atrocious. But the point I wanted to make about that was, I think Watchtower is very deliberately telling witnesses what they want to receive at World Headquarters, which is letters of appreciation, rather than what they necessarily are receiving. And to drive this point home, there was a Watchtower dated October 15th, 2011, page 32, which said, I don't know whether I should read all of it, it's quite long. Look it up, it's questions from readers, and it basically says that they don't want to receive all Bible questions at headquarters. Neither the branch office nor World Headquarters is in a position to analyse and answer all such questions that have not been considered in our literature. We can be satisfied that the Bible provides sufficient information to guide us through life, but also omits enough detail so as to require us to have strong faith in its divine author. So in other words, just believe what we're telling you. Don't send us awkward questions, because we don't have the resources to answer them all. And then you have this latest video which is saying, but we will accept your letters of appreciation, and be assured that they find themselves all the way to the desk of Gerrit Loesch or whichever other one of your favourite governing body members you wish to write to. So there was also this segment on a Dutch couple, and he was in prison for a number of years for refusing obligatory military service. And when they get out of prison, they have a circuit overseer round. Oh, I should mention that they're living in a nice house, and he's working, they have a comfortable life. And the video is even introduced by Geoffrey Jackson by saying, this month you will enjoy meeting a witness couple who lived a comfortable life, but then one day came to the realization that they could do more in Jehovah's service by living an uncomfortable life. And that's what happens. They invite a circuit overseer for dinner, and he looks at them and says, why aren't you pioneering? And they basically look at each other and think, he's got a point, we should be pioneering. We haven't quite sacrificed enough yet. The long years in prison that we suffered as a result of being witnesses weren't quite enough of a sacrifice. We need to get rid of our comfortable house, hand in our resignation at our place of employment, and rent a small pokey apartment that doesn't even have a shower, which is precisely what they do. And they go on to relate how he went to Gilead. She wasn't allowed for some reason. I'm guessing it might have had something to do with her being of a different genitalia arrangement. And yeah, they give everything to serving the organisation. Very sad, really, especially since they can't see anything wrong with it. Well, they're not going to see anything wrong with it, are they? Because they're indoctrinated. But it does make those like me, who did also waste a number of years, not as many years as them, but did waste a number of years doing pioneer work, kind of squirm a little bit, because it's just ridiculous how much is asked of people. you're asked to give up everything really, and not just your time and your money, but your aspirations as well. If you're a young teenager, forget about a decent education. If possible, go straight from high school into the pioneer work. And it's just, I think that's one of the most emotive subjects for me in my activism work, because I think that it's one thing to try and indoctrinate people, but to actually rob children and young people of their potential, of their opportunities in life, is, I think, repugnant. It's morally bankrupt, and that's one of the things that I feel most strongly about, and I'm going to be touching on that subject in a future video. So those are the main segments I wanted to talk about. I hope I've not been too offensive. I know that there will probably be a few Jehovah's Witnesses watching this, because I'm guessing that the 30,000 who watched my last video weren't all ex-witnesses, especially from some of the comments where I've been criticised for having long hair and a beard, but that's another subject entirely. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with a musical video, so enjoy and thank you for watching.
If you have been affected by a disaster, rest assured that Jehovah knows what you're going through, and that his organization will do all it can to provide help. And that's the theme of this music video. We won't forget you.
When your wind blows, when the rain comes, when the ground beneath you starts to slip away, God is always near, and he cares for you. You're not alone, your friends are here if you do what they say. We won't forget you unless you leave our coast. We won't ignore you unless you're disfellowshipped. We'll slap your hand, we'll make you stand, we'll go back after all. We won't forget you unless you leave our cult. So don't even think about it. No, sir.